Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Underground Sound. I'm Emerson.
And I'm Noah.
And today we got a lot to talk about with a good friend of mine, River Murphy. River, how are you?
I'm good, guys. I'm excited to be.
Thank you very much. So we're starting off with DaBaby. Is that right?
Yes, we are. Off of his new album, Kirk, which is widely considered to be his best effort so far, but we will get into our thoughts in just a minute about that.
Yeah, so River here is what brought this to my attention. So River, why don't you lead us off on your thoughts about DaBaby in general, kind of how you found him, and then you can kind of go into the album, I guess.
Well, I really liked his new album, Kirk. I don't really remember how I found him, but I know that I saw his music video that has him as a mailman, Shug. I feel like that's when he started blowing up, and that's when I started taking real note of him. But my favorite ones off of Kirk are probably Toes, because I just like him and Lil Baby together. They have it's literally called Baby, isn't it?
Yep.
On Quality Control.
Yeah.
That one a lot of people like. I guess there's the two best babies right now, And then I don't know. And then I Off to Rip, and then what's the one with Nicki Minaj? iPhone. I like iPhone a lot. That one was one of my favorites for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of those. The one song that really stood out to me was Gospel. That's the Noah. You just looked at me. What did you have on that?
Gospel, for me, was far and away the best song on the album. I personally enjoyed most of what the album had to offer, but Gospel just really stuck out. I remember not looking at the track list and the features so that I could sort of go into it a little bit blind, and seeing Chance the Rapper on there, especially after his frankly disappointing album this summer, was actually a refreshing change of pace, and I really just enjoyed how he even gave a little bit of shout out to Nipsey, or at least mentioned him, and it was more personal than anything else, and I just really do like that sort of new gospel style that some rappers are adopting, and I didn't hear huge influences like you would on Kanye's recent snippets, but I definitely got a little bit more of the personal side of DaBaby on here besides his achievements and accomplishments, so that's what really stood out to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Oh, go on.
I kind of appreciate him starting out the album with Intro, because it really was interpersonal and gave us a look into why he didn't have his tour. His fans were kind of wondering what happened. And it's always, I feel like the most influential music is the ones that are have emotion in it, and you could really feel it in that song. And to start out an album like that, I just feel like anyone who listens to an album correctly, they start out in the beginning. So it gave you that pace and it gave you that emotion right from the beginning.
Yeah, I completely agree. What really stuck out for me in that song, which I also think was one of the best on there, Intro, what stuck out to me was the famous critique that DaBaby makes the same song 32 different times. The fact that that song came right out of the gate with a completely different message, with a completely different flow. I think, to me, that was kind of a big statement right off the gate there of how he's making sure this album's a little different, a little unique, and trying to prove all the haters wrong.
That's what I'm saying. I definitely agree with that, especially in light of the fact that much of the music that I hear today, especially from veteran artists, it sounds very, very samey. I think that he really gave a little bit of distinction on this album, and I think it's just great. This has personal significance to me because he's from Charlotte. As a North Carolina native, I think it's awesome that we have another up-and-comer beside J. Cole and, of course, Michael Jordan. But I think it's just really cool that DaBaby came out with something that made more of a statement, not just about his accomplishments, which there's plenty towards the latter half of the album, but more about the personal side of why he's doing this and why he's in it. And I think he sounds very confident the entire way through, very similar to his XXL cypher.
Absolutely. Did you have anything else on just kind of something that stuck out as different for this album, River?
I didn't get the chance to listen to it twice, but I feel like he put a lot more different styles into this album. Do you know what I mean? I
know exactly what you mean, yeah. Gospel obviously was much more on the spiritual side. Intro was a little more personal, and then obviously he had a handful of songs that were classic DaBaby,
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Well, even the Migos feature sounded like a Migos song, so I thought that was kind of cool. Also, he kind of gave a little bit of credit to the features as well, and I think that's.
It's always interesting interesting to see the people that they feature with.
That is always interesting, yeah. See who they kind of work well with and who works well with them.
Yeah, for starting off, he's got Kevin Gates, Chance the Rapper, Gucci Mane, YK Osiris, Lil Baby, Moneybagg Yo, Stunna for Vegas, and of course Migos, which are possibly, the best feature that you could get in 2019. So I think that's really telling of just how up and coming he is and how successful he's been just almost overnight, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say it really popped off quickly. Kind of out of nowhere for me. I like River. I was kind of basically around when Suge came out, a little before that, but right around that time frame. So River, have you listened to a lot of DaBaby's albums?
Yeah, I listened to Baby on Baby. I was going to see him when he was on tour and he canceled. I went to that 21 Savage one.
Oh, gosh.
And so I, kind of started listening to his album a lot, trying to get to know the lyrics and, get to know him a little bit, and then found out that he wasn't going to be there, literally the day that he wasn't there, so.
Dang. Yeah, I went back through Going Baby and the other album that is basically the same art design, just a different color. And I also went back to his much older stuff with his name Baby Jesus. I went through a couple of those. Noah, have you gone through a lot of his discography?
I really haven't. I did listen to Baby on Baby, as most people have. I think that's where a lot of people sort of got introduced to him a little bit more. But for me...
Life is pretty good, too.
Yeah.
That album?
Yeah, this makes me want to...
with Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah,
that's a big one. But this makes me want to dive a little bit further into his discography. I think Emerson has checked out a little bit more of it than I have, but clearly he's from Charlotte. That's really cool. But the fact that I just enjoyed Kirk as much as I did going into it blind really makes a statement about his artistry right now. And if he has anything even similar to that from years past, I'm very, very much looking forward to checking it out.
Do you feel like he's a really more influential artist because he's from around your area, or do you feel like it's probably the same everywhere you go?
I think that's a very fair question. I might be a little bit biased because he's, obviously about 2 hours away. That's very close. But for me personally, you might know that I'm not the biggest fan of J. Cole, and he's from Fayetteville, which is about 30-45 minutes from where I live. I think it's very telling that one of the first efforts that I listened to from DaBaby was so good to me personally, and he didn't really give way too many shout-outs to North Carolina. There's one or two songs where he mentioned it. I just really appreciate his style, and I was impressed with his XXL cipher. He really carried that with Meg Thee Stallion, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing right now is really, really strong work, and I'm really excited to see where he goes from this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so actually, you mentioned going into this blindly. What were your guys' expectations going into this beforehand? Because I feel like that's always a huge part of your outcome of an album. River, we'll start with you. What was your, expectations or initial thoughts on it?
Well, intro came out a week before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a little bit.
So when that came out, I had kind of high expectations for it to be I thought it would kind of be what it was, just maybe a little more what you traditionally think of for DaBaby, but I knew that he was going to have some kind of more personal songs, because I just feel like any time that an artist is going through something like that, whether it's a mental problem or they lose a family member, they always come out with these songs that are more emotional and more interpersonal.
Yeah.
And he had intro. I don't know. I feel like I need to pull up his album and look at it right now because I'm just kind of talking. But,
no, that's good. You're good.
There was another one that he talked. Oh, was it Gospel where he talked about his dad too? Because there was 2 songs where he talked about him. Yeah. It was really emotional. Yeah. And then I also liked that. I feel like it was vibes that felt different than what I would generally think of from DaBaby. So, I guess he just showed me a couple different styles.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, especially on Gospel when you were mentioning the line about him talking about his dad. He said something along the lines of, I lost my dad the same month they lost Nipsey, And I thought that was interesting because, most artists now, they've been giving shout outs to Nipsey Hussle and they've been doing this and that. But I think it's interesting that he's talking more about his personal life and just how that maybe in the wake of Nipsey Hussle's death, him as an up and coming rapper and also dealing with the loss of like a very close family member. That's something that was very, very unexpected to me. And I really enjoyed that because not only is Chance great on this track, I think he gives a lot more honesty than I'm used to, especially from artists who have gotten so successful so fast. It's great not to just hear all about his accolades and his accomplishments and what he can do, because I'm well aware of what he can do by the time this album dropped. And I think that by this track list, I was sold by the time. This was about track 6, I think. And I was sold on the album by then. I was very, very impressed. And I think it was followed up very well with the Nicki Minaj feature, which is iPhones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think for myself, going into it, I kind of was expecting just another Baby on Baby album, to be honest. I kind of thought he was going to ride that wave a little longer and kind of wait till he saw a fall off before he would really go in a different direction. So I was really pleasantly surprised when I saw a lot of fairly big changes and a lot of different creative looks. I was very, very pleased with this album in general. Would you guys say the same?
Yeah. And, going back to, those lyrics, he said in intro, he mentioned how he, got the news that his last album went #1 when he was at home, the same day that he flew back to Miami because his dad died.
Yeah, I heard about that, too.
Just imagine that bittersweetness. How do you feel happy about something that's so important? That's so amazing, But, something so bad just happened. I just felt bad for him. It was, really nice to kind of get to know him more emotionally than just have this, oh, yeah, he's a rapper that can spit and, kind of dresses around and might make you laugh every now and then,
Yeah.
Yeah, I take him seriously is what I think. It's more than just a one-note character. Rick Ross, it's more victory lap rap for him. For Chance, it's more spoken word, a little bit more softer on the personal side. For DaBaby, he has a nice mix of both. And especially with this album having so many eyes on it, it showcases a more well-rounded artist. And so that's what I think I can appreciate most about the album in general, especially in 2019. I've been listening to a lot of rap, and I've been pretty underwhelmed with most of what I heard. So the fact that not only is DaBaby somewhat local, North Carolina, he's also a great example of up and coming talent that we should keep close watch of.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we said a lot of positive things. Are there any negatives for any of you? Well, I'll start with you, Noah. Was there anything that you was a little disappointed with or just didn't quite enjoy?
Yeah. Near the latter half of the album, I personally really, really didn't really appreciate the whole confidence boosters that he was giving himself. He's just talking about, he's talking about change. He's talking about rings. He's talking about, just all that material possessions. Sure, I understand that. Especially when it comes to being successful, you're now able to afford more of that kind of thing. But I was really enjoying about the first 60% of the album where he was just kind of going more in depth rather than the surface level things. I think the song where I really noticed this was Probably Heard. And that's obviously more of a shout out to himself, sort of, hyping himself up a little bit. I think DaBaby, he's allowed a few of those tracks, but I felt like the latter half of the album really emphasized that more than ever, especially with his final track, XXL. We really, really appreciated him, but it's something to where I was a little disappointed, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. River, what about you? Was there anything you didn't enjoy?
To kind of go off of that latter half of the album, I definitely felt that, and also Migos likes to kind of claim that they're the kings of ad-libs and stuff like that, and I'm not saying that they're not, but I was so excited when I saw that he had a track with Migos, because I just thought that their energies and their vibes were going to go really good together. Do you guys feel like they would have been a really good duo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you there.
And it's not that it wasn't good. It's just I guess I hyped it up too much for myself. And so when I got to that song, I was really excited for it, and it was not what I would anticipate it to be. It's not that it wasn't good. I just really thought it would be great.
Yeah, the things with features that can happen a lot. You know, you see one of your favorite artists or just a big name in general, and you immediately start to blow the song probably out of proportion. That happens to me a lot. Actually, it's happened a lot recently because Pusha T's been featured on everything, so I've been getting overly excited about that. Anything else negative wise?
Well, I guess I'm just excited that means maybe now they'll have more songs together, because I just feel like once you feature with someone once, you always feature with them like again and again. And does he have any songs with Migos already? He probably does, and I'm just not thinking of them. But I'm excited for like new ones.
Yeah, I can't remember. Do they have Noah? Do you know if they have other songs together, Migos and DaBaby? I'm actually not sure about that.
I don't think that they do. I think this is easily his most high-profile features here. I certainly could be wrong, but just given Rivers' thoughts, I think the same thing about the Migos track. I've never been a huge fan of the Migos per se. I think all of their music sounds very similar.
I thought of something. He has songs with like Offset, who is a Migos.
Okay.
Like, he doesn't have Migos. Because you remember Babysitter?
Yes, actually, I do remember that.
Mm-hmm. But that's just Offset. That's not all of them.
Okay, yeah, you're right. So they I guess they kind of have collaborated before.
Yeah, I didn't hate the Migos track though. I mean, I thought it was very on brand, if anything. You know, it didn't do crazy things for me, and it didn't really disappoint me either. I was pretty much exactly what I expected, and I was like, you know what, this is a serviceable track. I appreciate that he was able to hold his own alongside such a well-known trio. So that's awesome.
Yeah, as for myself, you guys touched on a lot of the same issues that I've had. Definitely seemed like he kind of ran out of steam or kind of lost the purpose, really, in the album. Could you pull up the track list real quick? The song that I'm thinking of, I think it's called Reason. It's towards the very end. Really, that's the song name, Really. Now, do you guys remember how Really went exactly? Because I thought it was a complete carbon copy of Intro. The two songs sounded exactly the same to me, and that really bugged me because I felt like he literally didn't know what else to do, so he just did what he already did, which, I don't know, really rubbed me the wrong way.
Who even is this Stunna for Vegas guy?
I'm
not entirely sure. Do you know much about him?
I don't know. Stunna for Vegas might have been a friend.
I just pulled him up. I pulled him up, guys. He has a song that I have saved called 100 or Better with NLE Choppa. But
oh, shoot.
That, he's like Ashley DaBaby. If you guys know that song, do you know that Ashley DaBaby song? It's okay if you don't, because he doesn't have a whole lot of listens on any of these.
I don't know.
Personally, I don't. Like I said, I have to dive more into his discography. But I can agree with what Emerson said about Really. I think one of the first points that you brought up is that a lot of people are criticizing him for doing the same thing over and over again. And this is about, like we were saying before, and the last bit of the album where it starts sounding very samey, and it's more like I could take this or leave this. It's something that I could put on maybe while doing homework or maybe working out without sort of any paying attention to it. But I'd say the first 8 tracks at least were distinct enough to be on their own, stand on their own 2 feet. While I'd say 9 through 13 didn't really do much for me. Can you agree with that, Emerson?
I'm with you there. River, Are you there with us?
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick little break, and then we'll give our closing thoughts. For that break, though, we're going to play Going Baby by DaBaby.
Let's give it a listen.
All right, we're back. We're back here. I'm Emerson. We got Noah, and we have a longtime friend here, River Murphy, with us. We go over now our closing thoughts with DaBaby and his album Kirk. River, you want to take the lead on this?
I'm sorry. Will you say that one more time? I know I'm making you look bad.
No, you're good. You're good. Just your closing thoughts. Your last mark you want to make on the album there.
It's just nice to see him on the come up, and nice to see that he's trying to get more interpersonal with his fans, and I hope to see more of it in the future. And for him to also continue to give us those classic DaBaby songs that he was giving us before still.
Noah?
I honestly really, really did like this album. I think starting off strong is what does it for me the most. And then obviously, like we spoke, towards the end it wasn't as good. But I'm feeling a I'm feeling a strong 7.5 to a light 7.
He's got his numbers. He's good with that stuff.
Yeah. I'd say it's very serviceable. It did its job, and I'm pleased with what I heard, and I will be listening to about 3 or 4 tracks pretty consistently within the next few months.
I think I'm with you there. Yeah, Gospel and There He Left was the one that kind of stuck with me strangely. But yeah, no, I think it was a great step in the right direction. It showed a lot of improvement. I was real excited to see that. Definitely some mishaps, but I think overall I was really impressed. I honestly think this is DaBaby's best album. I haven't been impressed with his full albums before, but I really like this one. So if I had to put a number on it like you, I think I'd go with a 7, somewhere around there.
Very solid.
But yeah, so that is DaBaby and his most recent album, Kirk. River, thanks again for joining us. We definitely appreciate your input. Noah, any closing thoughts for River?
Yeah, first of all, River, thank you for coming onto the show. It's always great to have an extra opinion, especially with somebody so well-versed, knowing Emerson. It's great to have extra opinions on Kanye and just DaBaby's album, because I know that we were impressed, and it's great to hear that you've been diving more into the discography than even we have. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great talking about all this stuff with you. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, guys. It was great to be here. It's always fun to talk about music, so maybe I'll come back and talk another time. You guys can follow me on Instagram if you want. My name is River__Jade, and it's the same as my Twitter.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Once again, WSOE 89.3 Elon, North Carolina.